Welcome to the Rooted Family Podcast, where we learn how to mindfully boost our brains for optimal health and learning. Join me, Erin Sadler, teacher, speaker, brain health coach, yoga instructor, founder of the Rooted Family, but most importantly, mom of three, as we talk about how we can bring peace, prosperity, and fun into homes, schools, and communities. We all want to raise families that thrive in the world, not just survive. And this podcast will help you do just that. Thanks for joining us. Let's get growing together. How are you today? I hope you're having a great day. I'm Erin, and I'm so glad to have you join us, especially today, because we are going to be talking about something that I find is a big conversation. It's a big conversation in my friend circle. It's a big question when I go to talk to people and do speaking engagements. It's just a big deal. And today we're going to be talking about phones. So this is for if you're thinking about getting your kid a phone. So maybe they're getting to that age where they're starting to ask, or you're starting to think about it might be a good idea. This is also for you if you have littles. You may just want to absorb this for when you have to have this conversation. So for little parents, if you have little kids, you might think like, oh, we're not there yet. I would give it a listen. You're going to need to know these things. For the people that are just starting to bridge into cell phones and should I get my kid a phone or should I not get my kid a phone? This is prime time, baby, for you. This is a good one. And then if you are at the age of kiddos that I have, like my oldest, where and I'm going to go into it a little bit, where she has a phone, then we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing. If you've already bought your kid a phone and you think, holy buckets, what did we do? That opened a big can of worms. We're going to go through it all today. This episode is called I'm Not Flipping Out Because I Got My Kid a Flip Phone. So, just so you know, it's going to be fun and exciting. So if you've ever wondered, like, I don't want to get my kid a smartphone, and I'm going to call them smartphones in here. I don't typically, but I also do not want to have a lawsuit. So we are just going to keep it at smartphone. So when I'm talking about smartphone, I'm talking about a phone that has apps in it and not a flip phone, which is what my oldest daughter has, which is literally it flips open. So if you are a parent right now, like go back maybe like 10 years, maybe a little bit less than that, but maybe 8 years. I don't even know. But go back to that time before the smartphone existed and what you had and the old thumbsies when you had to do a text and it took a lot of like hit it 3 times to get the letter. That's what we're talking about. Okay. So first of all, if you're a new listener to the Rooted Family Podcast, hello, welcome. We would love to hear a little bit more about you, a little bit more from you, and sort of get like your parenting game. Visit therootedfamily.com. Let us know how we can help you today. Drop me a line on the socials. I would love that too. In this episode, I'm going to tell you why I flipped off following the normal, quote, air quote, normal route in getting my kid a cell phone, and why I am so grateful, in the words of Fleetwood Mac, I went my own way. I can go my own way. And let me just state, when I say me, because I'm doing the podcast, I actually mean my husband and I. We are both very much on board with this idea. And we had a lot of discussion about what the best choice was. And we'll talk a little bit about what helped us get to our decision, and I'll share that with you. But we went our own way. We definitely are not the norm, and I'm really grateful to not be the norm. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how this experience has been. So she's had her flip phone since the holidays, so a good 8-9 months. And so I sort of just tell you our story a little bit. So if you're in there and you're thinking about getting a phone, or you have a phone, one of your kids has a phone, you're like, this was not the best case scenario. And you might think that after you listen to this too, or you might be like, we're cool. Anyway, I'm just going to give you how it sort of ran in our house so you have some kind of idea. We're also going to talk about why not getting her exactly what she probably wanted turned out to be exactly what she needed to grow a strong character, a strong brain. I'm going to go into how it sort of helped her with respect and responsibility and some financial awareness. I mean, this has been a really good learning experience. So I'm really, so far, pretty impressed with the whole thing. I'll tell you all about it. We're going to talk about what's happening in tween, teen, and kids' brains when they have cell phones. And I'm going to tell you our family's 4 rules to owning a cell phone if you are a kiddo in our house. So full disclosure, my daughter is 13 and we decided that she did not need one until she was 13. And before that, and now my 10-year-old has it, she had a gizmo, which is like a wrist, like one of those watch ones, but no apps or anything. All it can do is call. So that's sort of where we're at. And so we're going to dive in. But if you haven't been following this podcast and you stumbled across us, welcome. You can find it on iTunes, my website. Hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, it's up on YouTube and a whole bunch of different places as well. Please hit subscribe and leave a comment for me. This helps me grow my business, and it also helps me know what kind of programming you guys are looking for. Did you like this? Is this not in what your wheelhouse is? What do you think about this? This is kind of a controversial topic. I notice when you talk to parents about cell phones, things they get their feathers ruffled a little bit. So, because I just think everybody comes into it with their own ideals, and they probably, this is just my guess, have some doubts about how good it is for their kid to begin with. And so they get a little bit defensive about it. So no, just so you know, no judgment on my part. You got to do what is best for your family. You can find me, Erin Sadler, on Under the Rooted Family on the Face, the Twitters, the Grams, the Pinterest, the YouTube, or just at therootedfamily.com. I'm there too, so you can check me out. And if you do, just a side note, if you do go and check the Rooted Family's Pinterest account, I have a ton of resources on there for you. So I don't know, if you're looking for some inspiration, you might want to head over there. And one of my favorite parts is joining the conversation with us. And this week's question is, at what age did you get, or are you planning to get your child a cell phone? So just leave it in the comments of these right under this podcast in our show notes. Just leave it in the comments below, or hit me up on social and let me know. Or send me a message. I'm cool with messages. Send me on Instagram. You can send me a DM or a message me. But I just want to know, at what age did you get, or were you planning to get your child a cell phone? Because I know on the scheme of things, I think we were a little bit waiting till 13, a little bit further than most kids are. I noticed that all of her friends got them before her. So anyway, and then explore these resources when you get a chance. I'm going to have a lot of resources in there for you to check out. So go ahead and look in there. One of them that we're going to talk about in just a minute are the 15 apps every parent should know about the dangers that and the dangers that come with them, which was put out by one of the police departments. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but I just want you to know that's in the show notes. And if you're not right by, just know you can go click it anytime. They're just hanging out in there. And then one more thing I want to mention that is free, so we have some free resources, is I want to give you a little present this month. I want to give you a free month of the Rooted Family, Because if you've noticed this season, I am talking about it because we launched it. I'm super excited about it. And I want all families to get this brain training. So I want to give you a month free. If you just go to therootedfamily.com, click on the Rooted Family Circle, and then put in the coupon code podcast, 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 you get a free month of the Rooted Family Circle. I want to change brains and lives, and I want to help everybody. So I want everybody to give it a try. It's where the Rooted Family community lives and grows. Through the membership, you get a front row seat to the best of my resources, including weekly family journals for every age, breathing and connection building games that are fun and engaging, and the coolest brain splain videos for kids. What's a brain splain video? Well, that's where I break down the monthly topic for kids and show them how it works in their brains. Research shows that when kids know how their brains work, they're empowered to change patterns and set their mindsets to making their goals realities. And parents, don't worry, I gotcha. I have a brain splain for you too, and a parenting blueprint, and a monthly group coaching session, and you get to be with me every single month so you can build your parent game. Listen, the truth is raising a family in the modern world without the Rooted Family skills is going to be harder. How do I know? All I have to do is look at the statistics and the brain research, and if you haven't, you should. I've spent years researching and testing out these methods in the real world, and I've developed fun, easy to implement ways that deliver the most bang for your brain bucks. And they bring you closer as a family too, which is awesome. I have seen this work for so many families because I created this curriculum for a school, and I teach it to families through private coaching, which costs a lot more than the Rooted Family Circle, BT dubs. My purpose in this world is to help as many kids as I can grow to be successful and happy adults, because that will change the world. I want a world where kids don't become crushed under the stress, or who feel empowered to speak their truth and live their dreams. Because I want to see your family grow, that's why I want to give it to you for free. Again, just put in podcast, and then come join me over there and give your kids the skills they need to stand tall in today's world. All right, so let's jump on in. Let's talk about me not being the norm. I'm okay with that. I'm also going to say that I am not going to judge anyone who made a different choice than our family has, because lots of people have. I'm going to say, what I am going to say though, is when I tell people about this, a lot of parents say, I wish I would have thought of that first. So the parents that have already sort of gotten into cell phone land with their kids and getting them cell phones. And then with it, which we'll talk about, comes the slew of everything that comes with it. So you're not just buying the phone. There's the apps, there's the texting, there's the social media. And all of a sudden, you're in a whole new world and you're trying to keep your kids safe and navigate it. And I think a lot of parents feel like, whoa, this is like a full-time job to keep up with this with my kiddo and to make sure they're safe. So I'm just saying, a lot of people that I talk to say, I wish I didn't even think about a flip phone. So I wish I would have thought about that first. So here it is. We bought our oldest a flip phone, old school flip phone, and I'm going to tell you all about it. From her reaction to using it to having it become a great teaching tool on responsibility and what our values of importance are, and what she has learned in the 8 months she has had it. It has been very interesting and some valuable things I did not expect to come out of it. So if you are thinking about getting your kid a phone, or you currently have a smartphone and have had some problems with your kiddo and social media, losing it, breaking it, texting, the list goes on and on. Just stick with me and I'll fill you in on why a flip phone has been really a good decision for our house. I'm going to have to really watch myself when I say that. It just trips off the tongue in a funny way. So last night, just to preface this, I was out dog walking with one of my friends, and we were having a discussion about all the apps. I mean, you guys know, you have phones. There's so many apps out there. And we were specifically talking about all these apps with the secret layer. And if you have not heard about the secret layer of apps, go Google it, because there's many apps out there that have like an underground layer to them. And my friend was saying that her daughter, who is my oldest daughter's age, had a friend over, and that the child was telling her that she had already been phished or profiled by a pedophile using this app's secret layer. And that, oh my gosh, you guys, let's just talk about that for a moment. The fact that a 13-year-old girl knows A, what phishing and being profiled is, B, knows predators are actively looking for her, and C, is very nonchalant about the fact that this is just a regular thing. I'm going to take a breath there for a minute. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I think she shouldn't know about safety or how to be safe, or that these things happen, but that it has happened to her 3 times this week already. That blows my mind. Does that blow your mind? What does that do to a 13-year-old girl's mind when she knows there are predators actively looking for her on a regular basis? It freaks me out. I'm not going to lie. And it reconfirms my flippin' decision to get a flip phone. Anyway, I was saying that to my girlfriend that I had just read an article about those 15 apps that parents should know about. It was put out by the Shorewood Police Department, and I'll link it in the show notes because of that secret layer. And honestly, that is one of my biggest relief reasons we got her a flip phone. I don't have the time or the brain dollars. And if you don't know what I mean when I say brain dollars, go back to the podcast I did with Melissa Wolak. I believe it's number 10, but it's right around there. I'll link it in the show notes. But my podcast with Melissa Wolak, we sort of talk about what brain dollars are. And to spend those brain dollars on keeping up with the changing apps and the underground yuckiness that goes along with it, it makes me, I just can't do it. It makes me sick to my stomach. And if I can avoid it, why wouldn't I? Plus, it is necessary in today's age to be up to speed on this kind of stuff. And as parents, we don't have the time and sometimes the knowledge to keep up. And if you aren't keeping up, what's getting through the cracks? I mean, we're talking apps. We haven't even gotten to texting or bullying. So, to be a parent of kids with a smartphone today, you have to be committed to basically running a part-time job, keeping up with kids' phones. Can I get a amen from anybody who is currently doing this? I talk to so many people who are like, it's exhausting to try and keep up with it. And I just did not want to be a part of that. So here's the biggest reason for me, though, about why we went with a flip phone. The research about what it does to a kid's brain, not a flip phone, a smartphone, what the research says about a smartphone in a kid's brain, and who exactly is programming your kid's brain when they're using a smartphone. Sounds sci-fi, I know, but it's like mind control through a phone, and that's exactly what is happening. And there's an article in Time magazine, and I will link it in the show notes, that from the Journal of Abnormal Psychology that talked about what's happening in kids' brains. And between 2009 and 2017, rates of depression amongst kids 14 to 17 increased by more than 60%. The increases were nearly as steep among those aged 12 to 13. That was at 47%. And 18 to 21 was at 46%. And the rates roughly doubled among those ages 20 to 21. In 2017, the latest year for which the federal data data is available, more than 1 in 8 American children ages 12 to 25 experience a major depressive episode. That's a lot, you guys. The same trends held when the researchers analyzed the data on suicides, attempted suicides, and serious psychological distress. That's a term applied to people who score high on a test that measures feelings of sadness, nervousness, and hopelessness. Among young people, the rates of suicidal thoughts, plans, and attempts all increased significantly, and in some cases more than doubled between 2008 and 2017. The CDC has also issued reports showing that the rates of suicide amongst young people jumped 56% between 2007 and 2016, and it had previously been declining between 1999 and 2007. There should be no doubt, the researcher said, that this is a mental health crisis among American teens and young adults. And when did that spike start coming? When the smartphone was introduced. Okay, so we know the data. We also have to look at what this is doing to the brains and who is brain training your kids for their own personal benefit. Apps, smartphones, games, social media are all being packaged and sent to you as fun releases from the everyday. However, they could be the cause of your biggest increase in stress. Take, for example, that those programs and phones are all developed by neurohackers and scientists who know how to program so that your brain becomes addicted. This is no joke. They are all coded to make you addicted to the app. And the thing is, our brains get used to a certain level of addiction, very similar to like alcoholics going from 4 drinks a day to the whole bottle. To keep up with the addiction, we constantly need more stimulation. And the programmers know this and build it into the game or app to get you hooked on your phone. And have you noticed, just by watching people walk down the street or kids hang out a bunch together, it's totally working. It's how often have you had a bunch of kids over to your house and they're not even talking to each other because they're all on their smartphones? And it's not just kids, it's grown-ups too. But I can tell you, when I see phones not out, that is more rare than seeing all the phones are the norm. So we definitely have fallen into the addiction cycle with our smartphones. And I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but we really have to think about it from a brain development of these younger kids. Not to mention, our brains are wired for real social connection. And we're depleting our actual FaceTime with other people and replacing it with virtual FaceTime that doesn't quite equate in the brain. We're losing that connection that causes, and that loss of connection causes all sort of mental issues. So, I know that was a lot to take in. Let me ask you this. This is sort of the question I asked myself when we were trying to decide what to do. My husband and I sat down, and this was the question I asked myself. If it wasn't a phone, if it was a person, if a stranger knocked on my door and said, "Hi, I would like to take your kid and mess with their brain so that it causes damage to their focusing ability, their relationship with you." Have you ever had an argument with a kid about a cell phone? Your relationship with your kid is being damaged by a phone. But anyway, okay, if a stranger was knocking on my door, if a person was knocking on my door, they're going to take my kid and mess with their brain so that it caused damage to their focusing. It messed with their relationship with me and their friends, meaning they're not talking to their friends as much face to face. And that person is going to mess up the reward center of their brain, basically making it form addictive habits, all while increasing their chances for depression or suicide. Would you hand your kid over to that person? I'm guessing everybody just said, HE double hockey sticks. No. You would never hand your kid over to somebody who said they were going to do all that to their brain. But yet we do it with a smartphone all the time. Okay. You would not. You wouldn't hand over your kid. But if your kid had a smartphone, that's exactly what's happening. If you are not willing to hand over your kid to a stranger to do that to their brain, you really need to think about whether or not they should have access to a smartphone, because that's what it's doing. Okay. One of the coolest things, well, cool yet I'm in my head a little scary too, but it is the Anderson Cooper interview. Have you guys seen that, where he shows what they go in and they show what's happening in your brain when you're on the cell phone, and they show it's sort of an insider. He used to work in Silicon Valley with all these programming of phones, and he couldn't do it anymore, and he left. And Anderson Cooper interviews him. It's amazingly insightful about what Silicon Valley knows that they're doing to your kid's brain. And they actually put Anderson Cooper with electrodes and show what happens to his cortisol levels when he's hooked up to the electrodes. So I'll link it in the show notes, but check it out, and I'll tell you about sort of some of it. Really, I'll just sort of sum it up. I'll do the skim to win. You know, we always say you're more than welcome to deep dive into the show notes, or you can skim to win. So this is sort of the skim to win. Okay, so knowing what I know about brain research, I knew we couldn't do the smartphone route because I am not willing to hand my kid's brain over to that stranger. And I don't want to put my kid on the fast track to depression/suicide. And I know we all think that it can't happen to our kid, myself included. You know, we think, oh, that wouldn't be my kid. But honestly, when they interview anyone who has had a devastating loss of a child to suicide, guess what? They all didn't think that it could happen to their child either. So, and it is. I mean, when you look at the stats, it's happening. However, I live in 2019, and being a teenager, I do want her to be able to call us when she needs us. And I know that texting, although something that adds brain dollar expenditure to me to check and monitor them, but it's not all the apps. I said that would be the brain dollars I'd be willing to expend to keep up with the texting. And I will say, if you remember pushing the buttons that many times, we have had many times where she just looks at me and she's like, I'm just going to call them. So that's been one of the pluses, is that the time it takes her to text somebody back, she knows. It's like we used to do. You, instead of texting somebody back, you would just call them because you're like, I'm not texting all that. And that's where she's at. So it's kind of nice because then she has the verbal connection with her friends. And so I'm going to tell you how we did it. We bought her a track flip phone from Amazon, and I will try and throw the link to the one we got her in the show notes in case you're interested. It's one of those that you can load with the text minutes, and I want to be really clear here too. That was her gift at the holidays, her Christmas present from us. We had done some things leading up to this, so if you're one of those parents that has not gotten into the cell phone yet, really, really good. A couple things that we did so that it was a positive and not a negative about her not getting a smartphone and getting a flip phone instead. So you might want to just think about this. We never promised her a phone, meaning it wasn't a given that she was getting one. And she always knew that if it came time to get one, it would come with rules and regulations. So just being really clear and sort of having that conversation if your kids are smaller, because I think they start asking younger and younger. So knowing what your game plan is going in, even if you have the little guys. And it's hard because when everybody else is swimming one way and you're standing on a rock, and you're not going the same way as everybody else, sometimes it's going to be tempting to jump in the water and swim with the rest of the fish. But if that's not your choice, you got to start getting that mental game plan ready. So This was set up for us and for her to be a winner situation and not a disappointment. When she opened it, she was genuinely happy and she thanked us. And I asked her later if that was what she was expecting. And she said not exactly, but she was just happy to have a phone at all. So she was totally cool with it. And honestly, I wish I had her in here with me right now. I'd like to hear you guys hear her say her version. We gave her starter minutes and she was up and running. Here are our rules for her phone. So number 1, she has to pay for minutes past any present ones that we gave her, which I love telling this story. So we gave her a bunch of minutes. That was one of her big parts of her gift too, was we gave her a bunch of minutes to get started, and we sort of had to talk with her about once these are gone, you're expected to pay for it. So be mindful of how you're spending your texting minutes and your calling minutes, but this should be plenty. It tells you on the little phone card how long it should last you. And I think we got her the 6-month card. So it should really last you a long time. Well, so she got this in the end of December. By the end of January, she kept saying her phone couldn't text. And when my husband went on and checked the account, she had burned through all of her texting. So that was a good lesson with how much you can text and how much is in there. So that was a really good responsibility lesson for her. And when she had to pay for the minutes herself, that was a great financial responsibility lesson. And I really, if you are getting your kiddo a cell phone, no matter what kind you're getting them, have them have some kind of financial responsibility for that phone. Whether it's just paying for the insurance for the phone in case they break it, whatever works for your family. But this is such a good way to build some financial responsibility in there. And so she learned she had to spend her own money, and she bought more text, and it really has been good that way in teaching her how to be financially responsible for something important to her, like a phone. Number 2 rule for us is if she loses it or breaks it, she buys the next one. The beauty of a flip phone is that they do not cost as much as smartphones do. So if it breaks, it's not the end of the world, and I can still afford to buy groceries for the month because we're not having to go buy her a replacement. In fact, I won't lose any groceries that month because she's responsible for paying for it. But I'm just saying, if I was in a situation where I had bought a smartphone and then had to replace it because it was damaged, I mean, I just cannot believe how much money they cost. It's really expensive. So the cool thing with our little flip phone situation is if it does, I mean, we've had people tell us how many times she's dropped it in front of them, which does not surprise us at all. Durability factor for a flip phone is pretty good, I gotta say. And I'm just basing that on our own personal house. But the amount of times I've seen that thing fall out of her hand and hit the floor and it just keeps on ticking is amazing. It's like the Energizer Bunny in our house. The 3rd rule, so number 1, she has to pay for her minutes. 2, if she loses or breaks it, she buys the next one. 3, where it lives and when. So even though it's not a smartphone, and I'm not going to go into all the research today about how so many studies say sleeping with your smartphone by your bed or in your room, especially for teenagers, is a terrible idea. But Google it if you want to, and you can read some of the research behind that. So even though it's not a smartphone, it's a flip phone. It's the old adage of nothing good happens after 11 p.m. In my house, because I go to bed so early, nothing good happens after 9 p.m. So we have a rule that at 8 p.m., everything electronically has to be on the kitchen counter. So that's sort of just our rule. Same thing with good old Alexa. We have an Alexa, and she sometimes travels around the house. Kids like to listen to music, but Alexa, any other electronics we have, or cell phones need to be on the kitchen counter. And there's just like our charging station there. So that's kind of what we do. And then the fourth rule is we get to check it whenever we want. It's less tech. A flip phone is so much less tech to hide things. It's pretty straightforward. I can go in and see text if I want to. It's been so far 8 months in, pretty easy cheesy. Every so often we check it, but she's been really responsible with it. And so we've been really lucky about that. So what it has taught her, it's taught her how to choose how to spend her minutes and her time. So she always has plenty of talk time, it seems, on her phone because she calls her friends, but her text minutes, well, then she's not stuck looking down at a phone texting. I like that she's communicating with people and getting all those brain cues of voice intonation and really hearing what somebody has to say. We all have had the situation where text, and maybe you've had it with your kids, kid to kid, where texting goes on and you don't know how somebody feels about something, or that part, the emotional part, is lost in the shuffle or misinterpreted and feelings are hurt. So the nice thing is, because she calls people, she gets to talk to them about it right there. It has made her, like I mentioned before, it's made her financially responsible. She's currently, this is a great one too. So she ran out of text, I don't know, like a month ago, and she has plenty of money in her account. Our family does FAMZoo, which I will link down below too. And I'm just saying what we use. They're not giving me any money to say their name, but we really like it. So in her account, she has plenty of spending money if she wanted to buy more, but she's like, I'm fine. So she's kind of already found like it's not the end all be all either. She's got other stuff to do. She's involved in other things. She'd rather go ask her friends to go hang out. It's more of a tool than it is a companion. I don't know. I think we sort of, I have a smartphone. If we have one, they're like, you wouldn't leave the house without your smartphone. You wouldn't leave it anywhere. And it's by you all this, it's sort of with you all the time. And I love that is just a tool for her. And it's not something she feels like she has to have to live her life. That makes my mom heart so happy. So she is rocking no text. Like I said, she's got plenty of money to buy more, but she doesn't want to. And her birthday's rolling around and she'll be 14 soon. She's like, I'll probably just wait and ask for gifts for her birthday, which I'm like, by all means, you can rock it however you want. She has an understanding of how to handle phone conversations because she communicates with her friends. Some kids are really good at holding a conversation on the phone, and some kids, because they don't do it and they don't have the practice, and I get it. You may be saying, Erin, coming soon, nobody's going to talk. But you think about it, if your kid has to get a job or they are going to be in the workforce, or you just want them to communicate with people that are older than them, they need to know how to have a face-to-face conversation. And it's a whole nother podcast, not today, about eye contact and how important it is for your brain. And I know over a phone it's not, but knowing how to make eye contact with people and talk to them. What I've really noticed, and I don't know if you have too, raise your hand if you have, that because we look down at our phones so much, especially if you grew up looking down at a phone so much, there's such a decrease in eye contact made. That's actually a skill that needs to be worked on. So that's big at our house. I just think because I'm so aware of the brain research behind it, that when our kids are talking to us, making sure we aren't looking at anything else and we're making eye contact with them, but also when they're talking, making sure that they are looking at us and making eye contact with us too. You get so much more out of a conversation brain-wise when you do that. Okay. So she's also getting, by talking to people, she's getting the emotional intelligence relationship builders she needs too. And she's also learning, which I love, that she does not need all the extras. So often today, kids fall into the magic of more is more. Like, I got to have this, I got to have this, more. But she learned that less is actually more, and that's okay. That having less doesn't mean you're less. Let that sink in for a minute. She knows that having less accessibility to apps and social media is actually giving her more. And I think that was a process in this 8 months. I think she originally probably really wanted the big shiny to be like everybody else because you're a teenager. I totally get that. Because I think as adults, we sometimes battle that too. But I think this has been such a great growth that she's realized she doesn't really need it. We gave her the opportunity to figure it out on her own, and she has. That's the cool thing. I really love that whole lesson that gave her. And she also learned that her parents cared deeply about keeping her safe and her brain health. And we will go to all lengths. We will even wade into the uncool parent waters if that means she gets to lead a life, a great life with her mental well-being in check. Because your phone is not who you are. And you're more than your phone. And being different is okay. And people who judge you based on what you have and not who you are probably weren't the people that you needed in your life anyway. And I will say, occasionally she gets teased in a very loving way. There was one time I was driving a bunch of girls to a group that they do on Wednesday nights, and they all got in the car, and immediately, and I mean, send me a message if this has happened to you too. Immediately, they were all on their phones. No talking, just a lit up back seat. Like it was like fireworks in the back seat with all the lights of the phones. And my daughter turned around and she said, hello. And she's like, you guys just got in. Like, let's talk. And they jokingly, and they've known her since she was little, so it was all very kind. They said, yeah, well, you want to talk because you don't have a smartphone. Which made me say, all right, challenge time. I said, hey, you guys, I have a challenge for you. Do you think you can make it from point A to point B without looking at your phone? And it's like everybody has to be a team player. And they were so cute because they're like, yeah, we can do that. So I said, all right, starting when we were at a red light, when the light turns green, nobody can look at their phone the whole way there. And they didn't. They really just didn't. And they talked, and we talked about everything from the environment to hover cars and why they're good or why they're bad, why they borrow their mom's clothes. And it was just so awesome to see them all communicating and building their brains. So that's what we did so far. I think it's flippin' fabulous. And as I listen to friends and family tell their stories of kids who get in an argument and fights on social media, who have seen things that they should not have seen, accidentally seeing something on somebody's phone or their own phone or a friend's phone. And I know you can do that just by going on the computer too. I know you can see things you're not supposed to see or that would crush your mother's soul if she know that you were looking at. But the accessibility of seeing it on a phone when it's in your pocket all the time, I think just increases personally. I think about the girl that my girlfriend and I were talking about at the beginning, that she has to deal with that, knowing that 3 people were profiling her. And I just don't want that for anybody's kid. I don't want them to have to live in that world where they know that there's yuck, that kind of yuck, and it's so close to you. I think my lucky stars that we made the choice that we did, because parenting is so hard, and technology, I think, makes it harder. I know technology gives us so much, but in the world of trying to keep up with all of it, with parenting, I really think it makes it harder. And I question myself, how much do we need? And is it just complicating an already complicated situation? We didn't even touch on, okay, so here's what we did not touch on today. Teen brain changes, like what's already going on in the teen's brain. And then you add a cell phone into the mix, and it just seems like a really bad idea. And we didn't even talk about like bullying or social media very much. And those are major things going on today. The bullying on social media is so out of control. And why is it so out of control? Because the disconnection. You don't have to connect with somebody verbally. You don't have to look at them in the eye. You can just say something and you don't have to take accountability for what you said because you're not in that situation. So we could shout me out if you want to do a whole nother podcast on this. I'm happy to do it on what exactly is going on that way too. And if you needed my permission, or if you just needed to give yourself permission to do something differently, to not go with the flow, here it is. I give you the key to flippin' phone city. Go for it. Do the flip phone, even if it's just the test phase. If you say to your kiddo, hey, we're going to start with a flip phone. You show us you're responsible with a flip phone, and then maybe we can move up to the next step once we see you're responsible. That's sort of how we are with our daughter right now. We said, this is where we are right now. We'll see where we are in a bit. But in the meantime, here's the responsible behavior we need to see. And we need you to abide by our rules before we even have a conversation about what may or may not happen next. Although, I got to tell you, I am loving the flip phone so much, I can't see myself doing anything differently. So, let's talk about the truth. If you want to get different results than the current suicide and depression rates for teens that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we have to be willing to do things differently and evaluate what our goal as parents is for our kids. My goal for my kiddos personally is to develop the brain architecture that supports them becoming content, empowered, successful, and at peace humans. And so when I look at what I allow in my house, I have to look at my goal more than what the rest of the world thinks is fun or necessary, or are they struggling with themselves but don't know how to change, so they just keep floating down the river of, I call it SOS. I'm going to say, so you put in whatever S word you want, but I'm going to say same old stuff. So floating down the river of SOS, same old stuff. I don't want my kid to feel stuck on a boat of SOS, so I can't be the captain of that boat myself. That is what purposeful parenting is. The last thing we want to teach our kids is that going with the flow is more important than figuring out what is important to us. So if this resonated with you at all after hearing this, tell me. I want to hear about it. I want to hear whether this is how you're doing it too, or you can disagree with me. That's fine too. Or maybe you have some really cool tricks for the way you do it. I want to hear about all that is. If you want to join me on how to grow strong, resilient kids, and you're ready to get the SOS out of the way and boost some brains, come join me at the Rooted Family Circle for some more monthly tools, tricks, journals, brains, that whole thing. Just come check it out. And don't forget to holla back with our question this week, which is, at what age did you get, or are you planning to get your kid a cell phone? All right, you guys, have a great week.